Hello! Do you remember this little guy? I did a video on it. It's a tiny little crawler, a tiny little FPV crawler. At the time it was called the OR40-Y60, it was the prototype. This became on their website the Y60-3005. Really fun car. I had some feedback for them about like the spring tension. It would sort of wobble about a bit. And they said they were going to look at that. And do you know what? They've brought down a new model. This is called the Y60-3010, also known as the Wrangler, and they said they've made some improvements on it. Specifically, they've changed out the spring, so hopefully they've made that a little bit less wobbly side by side, and they've done a lot of work on the turning. The last one, it didn't turn badly. You had to sort of go back and forth a bit, so it'd be interesting to see how this comes. I've got the FPV version, no goggles or anything. Of course, they come in the normal version about just the car with the camera, just the car with the controller, the FPV goggles. There's loads of different configurations. Check their website for details. But this is going to be interesting. I'm really interested to see how this compares, because this was a lot of fun. This was just taking this out over little stones. It's like driving on the moon, and these little suspension wheels were absolutely going crazy just outside in my garden, bits of slate stone. So let's get out of the box. Let's have a closer look, and let's see what it all involves, and let's get driving it. Okay, let's get this guy up and see what we get in the box. Some background, some instructions, and in the very common box you tend to get with these things, we get the USB charge cable, a spare set of tyres, a little plaque, and the car itself. Over here we have the FPV camera, and oh my goodness, they've done it again. They've sent me a rock. Look at that. How many cars do you get a rock with? Brilliant. Of course, you will need a controller for it. You can get these with the controller. I'll be using this one from a previous kit. And ditto, this is what the FPV goggles look like. For a fairly cheap pair of box goggles, these are actually pretty nice. The thing I like the most is the fact, aside from that they've got an inbuilt power supply, they've got an SD card slot, so you can record your driving around and share it with other people. So I guess the big question is how it compares with this. Well, there are a few little differences just to look at for starters. This is a slightly shorter wheelbase. Not by much, but just a little bit. And you'd also notice it's just got one slot for the camera, where the old one had two slots. Once again, that's hidden under this little hatch, which you can take off and pop your camera in. Now, I think the critical thing here is if I look at the old one and have a look how easy it is to move the suspension, this one's a little bit tougher. It's still got an enormous amount of travel, but if I get this and do that, it's quite a sort of slow rock. If I do that, oops, it comes back much quicker. It's much tighter. Basically, the springs are softer on that one. So you've got the normal stuff under here. You've even got a little sign here to say what's what, and that is the charge port, that is to switch it on. And that's about all we need to know, really. So we should charge this guy up and try driving it and see the difference between this one. Well, look, I haven't charged it up yet, so it's not properly done, but just out of the box I was just comparing, and already things are interesting. Things like the lights, they're pretty much the same, and you've also got turn signals. Let's turn the lights on as well over there, why not? But if you look at the amount of travel you've got in the steering, you can really see. So if I try this, get this to do a circle, the turning circle of the new Wrangler is much more. The other one's only up to there. There's a certain amount more noise coming from the motor. I wonder if it's got a little bit more torque to it. I'll be able to test that when we do a bit of driving and climbing stuff and things. Anyway, let's charge this up fully and I can have a proper play. Yep, here we are in my garden again, and this is what you think is pretty much flat slate that you'd throw down. It's pretty much a torture test for these little cars. I tried it in the previous one. I fell over quite a lot, although I didn't try it without the camera on. So I'm doing this line of sight. And doing driving like this line of sight, I have to say, is a lot easier. You can really look and see where the wheels are. If you get stuck, you can see where the problem is and how to approach it differently. That said, I still feel this is a little bit too much for this poor little car. It's really struggling, but it does hold up pretty well, and even when it's about to turn over, it sort of manages to get back. You can kind of see just how well it can do about getting over what are enormous obstacles for the scale of this little car. It's doing really, really well. But I thought I'd try it on something a little bit different, so I went over to some gravel, and well, apart from the fact that the ants now look massive, it's okay. It still gets a bit bogged down in this sort of thing. So I thought let's see how it looks FPV at least. So just before I tried doing this on, the difficult stuff, essentially rock crawling on this sort of thing, I thought I'd take it for a quick drive around to see how it did. That's me there in my Fat Sharks. And what I did is just try and take it round just to see what sort of distance I can get on the control, see how the view was. You can see it's got that side-by-side thing going. It's improved on the last time because it just kept swaying all the time. This is a bit better. It's still there, but it's definitely better. And anyway, one thing about this I noticed is the control distance is improved. And you might be thinking, you're only 20 feet away from yourself. But on previous versions of this, both the VTX and the control signal have just completely gone after a relatively short distance. Like, I only had to be in the next room and it would go. But this one is going much better. I could go all the way along the deck here. I get slightly stuck. And just keep going, which makes it quite good fun as a car just to go and explore, bits in your garden things. And whereas other small cars would get stuck here as we're going into the outside rug, this one just carries on. So although we're a very short distance away from ourselves, in the scale of things, it feels like we've been driving for sort of half an hour. We're absolutely miles away, and the view you get there is so low to the ground. It does feel like you're further away than you are. Obviously I fly quads and you go up in the air and you can see a long way. When you're this close to the ground, everything seems much further away. But anyway, let's try getting to the off-roading. And the problem I find with kind of extreme stuff like this is you can't really see where all your wheels are at the same time, so it's very hard to pick your route. Where in line of sight I could drive through this stuff and pretty much not fall over and see where I had to back out and take a different route. When you're doing it in FPV, you don't get that same viewport, so it is actually pretty difficult to use. And it was a similar situation in the gravel where I just kept falling over. So what to do? Well, I have built this from household objects that were lying around. A folder, you go up the folder, you go over this box file thing, you go across the ruler, turn, go over the foam and then down the slope, ending up here. Not a complex course. I was limited on time and materials, and I thought I'm going to try and do this line of sight first, and then if we can actually do it, then we'll move over and try FPV. So I'm going to pop the camera down on its tripod like this, and then basically I'll move the camera as we go. So let's do line of sight first. I'm going to keep the camera on just so the balance is right. Absolutely no problem getting up there. One thing I noticed about this one is it seems like the throttle is a little better for going slower. Okay, so here's my worry part. This is the ruler. And line of sight, I can line up on this relatively well. I can see where the wheels are, as he says, almost going off. And I can kind of keep myself there. But it is pretty tricky. That ruler is literally the whole size of that little car. So let's turn it around here so we can go down this bit. And again, with this foam bit, I'm hoping I can get lined on. That looks pretty good. Oh, 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 oh. I'm a bit worried here. No, we're okay, we've got back. There you go, that is the course. So now let's get the goggles on, see what happens. I'm going to try and keep the camera kind of like there. So hopefully that films most things as I put the goggles on. Okay, here we go. Not the world's greatest FPV camera, so some of it looks a little bit dark, but I can kind of see where I'm going. And over onto the box file. Oh yeah, the ruler looks pretty big from here, so I just need to think about. Oh, I haven't lined up. Oh! I thought I was doing fine there, but something went wrong. Let's try it again. It'd be interesting to check what the external camera picked up, because it felt like it was fairly straight. Okay, this feels better, and I can just look at the front of the car. Ooh, 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 ooh. There's me. Proof I'm doing this FPV. So I think I'm going to come down slightly higher than it looks. Uh-oh, uh-oh. I don't feel I'm on very straight here. Nope. You weren't on there very straight. Right, try that again. Oh, I'm at a funny angle there. That's bad. Yeah, I felt I was going to go down there. I can see that there's a slight turn in it, but I'm not quite sure how to correct it. I'm going to go slightly more to the right than I would think is right here, because I keep falling off the other way. Oh, that looked better. That looked better. Oh man, I got to the mint and then fell off. Come on. I think they weren't as lined up as I thought they should have been, actually, that one. That was the problem. Right, let's try it again. Slightly to the right. Yes. Alrighty. We done a lap. And then for the next 5 minutes, I tried in vain to get a clean lap. I'd either hit the ruler wrong or hit the phone wrong, but eventually I got it. This is my clean lap. Yeah! So you can literally build stupid courses for yourself out of general household junk. And when you make it all the way around the first time, cleanly, it feels pretty good. Much better than it should do. So on my last little FPV drive for this video, I thought I'd try and take it around the house to see how well that receiver and video would work. Because as I said before, literally I could go into the next room and it would lose signal, but this performed really well outside, and so I wanted to see how it would do. I also wanted to go over a variety of surfaces, so we started on the carpet, which is quite hard going for this sort of thing, and we're on the hardwood floor now, which is a bit easier. And as you can see, we can go under everything and around stuff. It's a bit like flying a whoop, where you can go and explore stuff, but obviously you're on the ground, so it's a little bit different. But you'd be surprised what sort of nook and crannies you can find when you've got such a little car to maybe get round and under things easily. Yeah, this fits in surprising places. The little antenna on the camera makes it a little bit hard to get under really tiny gaps, but it's not doing bad at all. We've got an interference pattern line. I've got a bunch of 5.8 gigahertz Wi-Fi devices, and that sort of line that's going down is quite typical of interference you get from those. But the actual VGX itself is holding up pretty well, I have to say. And once again, we're just going on a variety of surfaces. We can crawl up that rug without a problem and onto other things. I'm just really looking for sort of roots and stuff that I might not have thought about, and nope, we can't fit under there. And that's kind of an interesting thing. It's like, yeah, it's fun to build a little course to go on, but it's equally quite good fun just to wander around your house in new and interesting ways and see where you can find the gaps where they exist. Believe it or not, we did hoover round there this morning. We seem to have missed some bits of dust there. Now, the other thing I wanted to check out is exactly how dusty would the wheels of this get. I have a cat and a dog, and they put a lot of fur everywhere, and obviously there's bits of stuff around the carpet and things, and last time the wheels did get very stuck with stuff, and I'm presuming this is going to be much the same sort of thing. It's just a case of really making sure you can take all of it back off again before you get going, because it'll wrap around tightly enough so the wheels won't move, but it can't get inside, it just sticks on the outside. And yeah, this is doing surprisingly well. This is a real step up from the previous cars, both in terms of the Signal and the VTX. The VTX is really lasting quite well. And sometimes you'll think there's a gap, but there's not a gap, and so you'll have to go a different way entirely. But essentially, this is the entire ground floor of my house, so I can sit in one room, drive around all the other rooms without a problem, go up and down onto the carpet. That's easy. And even scare the dog. The dog is very used to quads. Cars, she's not quite used to. She's like, what is that? I don't know if I like this. And again, we can go on these weird little surfaces. It's a bit shaky and weird, and you can see those interference lines happening, and that's where I got the files from. They're ready to be chucked out as long as my daughter says yeah, she doesn't need them anymore. We're all good there. Let's just speed this bit up as we work back to ourselves, because I do notice at this point the motor is starting to slow. It's either the battery, which I've been running for the best part of 20 minutes, half an hour, or the dust, or a bit of a combination of the two. But let's get back and check that out. Yep, that is pretty furred up, so let's get this cleaned off so it will run nicely again.
5 minutes with a pair of tweezers, and it's pretty clean. I got the most of it off, and it's just big ball of stuff here, so you can see how there was certainly enough to get on there, but it cleans up pretty well.
Well, I love this little thing. It's just got better. I really like the old one. I did notice there was a bit of swaying on that one. There's still some swaying about on this. It's tightened up. I don't know if they can get it better or not without going too tight for the scale, but it certainly performed. And the things they have really seemed to have improved on this one is I noticed the range of the RC and the VTX was better, the turning circle's better, and you seem to have more control over the throttle, so you can make it go slower. Last time it tended to get to a point on the throttle and then sort of spring forward a bit, so it was harder to go slower. This one seems nicer. And if you're wondering if this will connect to a multi-protocol module, I've got one in here, and yeah, if I turn about you can see the wheels going, and this is connected to the FlySky protocol, so you should be able to connect this up to a regular radio if you want to. Yeah, I like it a lot. Well done SNT for continue to develop and refine their little cars. They do just get better. I have to say, crawling is one of the few things where I think it's not necessarily all about the FPV. It's really helpful to actually look at it and know where you're going. I really enjoy just driving this around the house and stuff and exploring. When it comes to going over obstacles and stuff, it's really quite tricky in FPV. It's quite a challenge. It's a fun challenge, but I think it's fun to do in line of sight as well, so just consider that. Anyway, this was kindly supplied by SNT Just Air, and there'll be a link down below if you want to check it out in more detail. Anyway, hope that review's been helpful. I'll catch you next one. Bye for now. Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.